Let's look at 1 Corinthians 5 again, starting in verse 10. For not the immoral people of this world, or the greedy, or the swindlers, or idolaters, otherwise you would have to leave the world. Verse 11, but now I am writing to you to not associate with anyone who claims to be a believer, who is sexually immoral, or greedy, or an idolater, or verbally abusive, a drunkard, or a swindler. Do not even eat with such a person. For what business is it of mine to judge outsiders, non-believers, who are not part of the church? Don't you judge those who are inside the church? But God judges those on the outside, the sinner, the unbeliever. I want you all to understand this passage, for many will push back and say, but the Bible says, judge not, lest ye be judged yourself. But unfortunately, this verse is taken so far out of its context, it's not even funny. We let God judge outsiders. For if we are to judge outsiders, then we would all be guilty. But along with judging outsiders implies verdict and sentencing. This is clearly God's job. For example, if you're a baker and a gay couple walks in and wants you to bake them a wedding cake, and you want to be like, well, I'm a Christian and I feel like my faith is under attack. No, it's not. Your pride is under attack. Jesus would show mercy. If your job, if the occupation, the profession that God put you in is to be a baker, then be a baker. It is to run a business well, and that means you don't discredit people and discriminate against people and turn away people and say, I won't offer my business to you. When God offers salvation to all sinners, while we were still sinners, Christ died on us. We shouldn't look at the unbelievers and say, you have to get yourself right with God before I will do business with you. When your occupation is not in the church, it's in the world. So you should treat all people as you would want to be treated. You should not show condemnation when Christ shows no condemnation. God desires mercy. And whether you're Kim Davis in a county clerk's office or a dude who owns a bakery that refuses to bake a cake for a gay couple's wedding, you are judging the outsider. You are judging the unbeliever. What's there to judge? They're an unbeliever. They heap judgment on themselves because it is God that judges them. Corinthians makes it very clear. God judges outsiders, those outside of the church, the unbeliever. But he says, you take care of the people amongst yourselves in the church. If a gay couple walked into a church and demanded that the pastor marry them, the pastor doesn't work for the state. The pastor works for Jesus, and the pastor is responsible for what happens in his church. And that pastor has every right to decline the married couple. Because the married couple doesn't have to get married in that church. They can go get married at the courthouse. But if you work in the courthouse, if that's your job, then God expects you to do your job. And do your job the way your job description is laid out. When you use your faith as a platform to discriminate and judge others, you are dishonoring God. Because you're trying to steal God's right to judge away from Him and say, I will judge these people. When you yourself were worthy of judgment. You yourself were worthy of judgment and God showed you mercy. So who are you to show judgment on the unbeliever? God says, that's my job. And my job, I judge by seeking to reconcile myself to them. So let's be very careful about judging outsiders, those who are not inside the church.